Hey, Jaclyn, thanks for taking the time to join me on the podcast today again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, you joined me last year for episode 73 to talk about potassium. So I'm so thrilled that you could join me again this year for a conversation about the importance of magnesium in vineyards. And by the way, if you missed Jaclyn's prior episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to episode 73 that was released on June 10th, 2025. So, Jaclyn, before we dig in on our topic of magnesium, can you quickly remind our listener about how you got interested in soil science, vineyards, and why your focus is currently at Delaware Valley University?
Yeah, so I'm the assistant professor of soil and environmental science here at Del Val, and I accidentally stumbled into soil science and specifically vineyard soils. I got interested in soils because of soil judging, which I kind of got interested in because I wanted to be outside.
Good reason. Good
Um,
reason.
it's a great reason, right? Just like a lot of vineyard people, I wanted to be outside, you know, looking at plants, touching grass, not necessarily inside a lab. And so I ended up getting involved with soil judging, and then through that, kind of got back involved with horticulture and fruit production, and ended up doing my PhD on vineyard soils in Virginia. So kind of a tangential way of getting where I am now. But now I teach at Delaware Valley University. I mainly teach different classes. So I teach soil chemistry and soil fertility, which I'm sure will come up today.
Yes.
Um, I also teach introductory soils every semester, as well as the labs that go with that. I teach soil genesis. I've taught environmental remediation, so a lot of very focused soils classes. But I do find time to do a little bit of research, a little bit of like extension and outreach with vineyards still, and I do really enjoy that.
Let's talk about magnesium and let's just start on the basic level, Jaclyn. Let's say, what is magnesium? Where does it come from? Let's start there.
All right. Well, you got lucky because magnesium is my second favorite nutrient after potassium, and they are
Okay,
very
awesome.
related, like you said. Um, so magnesium is an essential plant nutrient, one of the list of nutrients. It's considered a macronutrient, meaning that plants need a lot of it, or grapevines need a lot. Um, it the main source of it is from the soil, and it's generally mostly from soil minerals themselves. So something like nitrogen and phosphorus, you generally get a lot from, like, the organic material, from plant residues and stuff. You do get a little bit of magnesium from there, but a lot of it comes straight out of the soil, just like potassium, and calcium. So I kind of think of magnesium as kind of the middle child of calcium and potassium. So, like, there's calcium, and then in the middle is magnesium, and then there's potassium. And they all have similarities, but also differences in how they move around in the soil and how they compete in the soil and also in the plant and how they move in the plant. And so there's yeah, it's kind of almost the not the unwanted middle child, but certainly the, like, a little bit of a chaotic middle child energy with magnesium.
What are we looking at when it comes to magnesium availability? How does soil texture or even types of clay influence magnesium availability?
So, magnesium can come directly out of the mineral, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Um, so sand, silt, or clay could just have magnesium weather out of them, which is kind of fun. But then we add in the CEC, the exchangeable availability of each of these as well. So the more clay you have, generally, the more exchangeable magnesium you're going to have. So more clay generally means more CEC, more spots for your magnesium to kind of stick onto those clay colloids. There's the technical term there, and then be potentially available to the plants to uptake. The really interesting mineral when it comes to magnesium is vermiculite, which is kind of a highly weathered form. We don't get a lot of it up here in Pennsylvania or further north. We get it more in more southern areas that have more rainfall. So we certainly see it in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, down into the South, where The clays have been around longer. You get a little bit more vermiculite. Um, but we see a lot of magnesium in what's called the inner layer between those. There's like nice little spots where magnesium can hang out and then come out of the vermiculite and get replaced. So if you have a lot of vermiculite, you potentially have not necessarily more source of magnesium, but a lot more potential for holding on and making your magnesium available rather than it leaving the soil or leaching out or something.
Growers have sometimes speculated, what if we just broadcast it across the whole vineyard floor as one big unit? And can we actually flood the system and compete with things like potassium if we're concerned about potassium being taken up in too high of a ratio, something like that? Has anyone worked on that? Have you heard of that theory? Does this hold any water? This theory? Should we be trying things like this? This is speculation, of course.
Yes. So, okay, I'll be careful here. Theoretically, from a completely theoretical standpoint, it should work. You should be able to compete with that potassium to kind of lower your potassium availability or uptake by flooding the soil with magnesium. I think in practice, that's a lot trickier to do, partially because the cheapest form that we can apply soil applied magnesium is going to be our dolomitic lime. And in order for that to move and to get down to where the potassium source is, which is our minerals, so it's not the topsoil, it's our subsoil minerals, it's gotta move. So that either means, like, deep tilling, subsoiling potentially, which I'm not a fan of because 'cause I'm a soil scientist.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm with
and
you.
yeah, and really, really messing with the soil structure and that field, or we're applying a whole lot of Epsom, and that's really salty. So that could have unintended effects also because 'cause we're adding a lot of sulfur in that case if we're trying to compete using that magnesium sulfate. So I think there's, again, some practicality issues with it. We haven't as far as I know, there haven't been any good, like, replicated scientific trials on trying to compete with magnesium with potassium. Um, that was supposed to be part of my PhD project back a few years ago, but we'd never got that far because we were still just trying to predict potassium in the soil, and it was a lot harder than we thought it was gonna be. Um, but I know a few vineyards who have done the deep dolomite incorporation and who have applied a lot of dolomitic lime or even Epsom to try to ease their potassium availability. And a few of the sites, it seems like it's working. It's just really hard to tell, again, scientifically, if it's truly what is happening, and whether or not it just happens to be a dry year, and so we just have lower potassium uptake in general, or if it truly is that magnesium competing with potassium. So, I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that one. I think it's a good thing that we should be looking into, and it's a potential for easing our potassium excess issues here on the East Coast, but it's hard to tell.